Hello, everybody, and welcome to the fourth ever episode of the Monday Money Podcast, coming at you live every Monday at 6 p.m. Before we start off today's episode, I want to make a quick little disclaimer. I want to just throw out there that none of the things we say or talk about in this episode should be or can be taken as any form of financial advice. Make sure you always do your due diligence when getting into any form of financial market. With that being said, Aaron, what do we got for our first topic today?
Good evening, everybody. So, our first topic for today is going to be flipping. Welcome to our fourth episode, and this is going to be about flipping. We're gonna quickly, just as always, gonna go over the definition of flipping, and then we're gonna get into it basically and just start talking. So, quickly, definition of flipping. Flipping is a term describing purchasing an asset and holding it for only a short period of time before reselling it. Flipping is intended to turn into a quick profit. So, what that basically means is, in rookie terms, as always, we have a certain product. Let's just use a quick little example. For example, you have an old Honda, a car. You have an old Honda, and you just bought it off of eBay for, let's say, I don't know what the price of Honda. Let's just use a hypothetical one, 700 euros. Yeah. It's very old, a bit stinky. But what you can basically do with it is now you can clean the interior. You can make sure that you remove any outer damages that can be removed by yourself. That doesn't really require a mechanic or a lot of, let's say, investment in it. And you essentially turn up the value of this car, which was old and lumpy, into maybe something that is old but not lumpy anymore. So this way you can actually make profit off of it, that you just off of the old Honda that you just bought.
So, before we get into the next definition, what are some of the items that we most see for flipping?
Oh, typically you see things like houses, cars. There's this fun little thing called couch flipping. A lot of people apparently buy couches and they flip them and they make actual profit of it, which I think is really funny. But yeah, typically you see buildings, equipment. I've seen office furniture a lot as well. Yeah, typically these kind of things, but mostly, they're cars and houses, or real estate, basically better. Okay, and now we got the second definition as well, which is going to be about which is going to be what a tangible asset is. So, a tangible asset is an asset that has a physical substance. Examples include a building, equipment, or office furniture. And in this case, well, there's not much to explain beyond this. I mean, it is just something that is physical, and this is what flipping is all about. That you use physical items, or, well, tangible assets in this case, and not something non-tangible, which would be something virtual, for example, which could be a cryptocurrency, for example.
Exactly. So usually when we're looking at things like flipping, we're thinking about getting it out of the hands of someone who's doing a second-hand purchase or a sale of it, taking that over, and then selling it once again second-hand ourselves. By just driving up the profit slightly, in most cases, we can actually make a lot of money off of that in the long run. So think about things like, couches. We've all seen it. You walk through a street and you see just one of those take it for free couches standing on the side.
Oh yes.
So for most people, this would be something that you walk around, or you're kind of like, it seems a little iffy to me. But what you can actually do is obviously take a look at the integrity of the couch yourself, see what the issues are, and possibly actually take it with you to then resell it. However, before going to resell something that you want to flip, you should of course always look at the integrity of it and if you can actually solve the problems that it has. So for car flipping, let's say I'm gonna buy this Honda, like Aaron said before. What I would usually want to have with me, at least if I focus on just car flipping, is something like a code reader, something like an OBD2. What this basically does, it is reads the code that's in the car, and that's telling me the issues that the car might have. So it's giving you an overview, and after taking a look at this, you may be able to find some of the problems. Then for yourself, of course, you have to be a little technical at it. You can diagnose the issues that are in front of you, and then either possibly take it to a mechanic to get these things out, or if they're very small pain points, you may be able to even get them out yourself. So that makes car flipping a very interesting thing. But tell me, Aaron, do you know more about house flipping by any chance?
Yes. So I've done my research with it, and what I could definitely find out, and which is, well, more so the obvious, is that house flipping itself is actually a high capital investment. So to get further into it, you basically need a lot of money in the start. If you're a student, or, well, you're in university still and all that, you wouldn't really start to do house flipping, since it is a bit more of a more difficult task. But it is something that definitely can make you a lot of profit if you can do it rightly, if you can do it, well, in a good way, and if you have somebody that actually can provide experience for you, because that is the next con of house flipping, which is you need a lot of experience for it. You need to know exactly, you need to do your homework with it basically. You need to know, what is this house, what can it do, where its weaknesses, how can I diagnose these weaknesses, how can I fix them, and yeah, possibly even you will have to in the end fix some pipes, for example, that are just laid in a wrong way or something, or fix a leaky what is it called, attic, right? Is that a word for it?
Yeah, leaky attic.
Yeah,
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, like if you have a leaky attic or something like that. So it is something that you have to be aware of before you get into it and do your homework, definitely. But in the end, I mean, the pros of it are just, you have very, very high, not very, actually, you have quite a high margin that you can get out of it in the end. And it can be done pretty quickly, but you do need experience for it still, in order to have it quickly. Yeah, and speaking of time, another really bad thing about it is, oh well, something potentially bad, I would rather say, is that the longer you spend time with the house that you have, the more and more the money you're getting out of it is going to be less worth it. Which means, if you're buying a house, an old house that you're trying to flip, for example, for 40K, and you go into it, you fix everything, but then you notice that something in the attic is, you have a leaky attic, which then you need to like some construction workers and all of that to fix this leaky attic. And you originally planned to sell this house within a range of 6 months, but in the end you essentially needed a whole year, which is going to be basically a waste of time for you, and in the end is going to make these, let's say you flip it for 500K, that means you have 100K, that is going to make this 100K less and less valuable in the end, or, well, less and less worth it. Yeah, that is going to make it less and less worth it, because in the end you're basically making 50% of a loss, basically, in terms of time.
Yeah, that's actually always the interesting part to me. So making sure that you get the right house for house flipping really comes down to your own understanding and your own, well, research on the topic itself. Because of course it's going to be very rough once you get in there, and it seems like the piping's either going to be, let's say, clogged, or it's leaking somewhere, it's starting to rot away. But these are all the things that you have to look out for as well as a house flipper. So that's why a lot of these people that actually do flip houses, they take someone with them, specifically there to look at the integrity of the house itself.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I know a fun little story about this house that was bought like let's say 8 years ago, something like that. So there was a house, right? And it was kind of being purchased or sold for relatively cheap compared to the house, square meters, and the interest in the house itself. So what turned out to be one of the problems is one of the nearby trees, as we all know, the roots of trees are very strong and can be a real pain in the ass when, you're trying to buy a house, or your neighbor puts down a tree, and over time it will start increasing, or decreasing the water that's in the soil under your house, which makes it relatively dangerous or easy to kind of bulge down and sink into the ground, as it may. So what ended up happening is these people bought this house for relatively cheap, and then they simply burned down or took out the roots of the tree that was near the house. And what ended up happening was, as it started to rain, and over the course of about a year, the ground slowly started to get more moisturized. And as the ground moisturized, yeah, that's relatively interesting. As the ground started to get more moisturized, it actually started rising up again because its density increased.
Mm-hmm.
So what ended up happening was the house came back to a relatively good condition, because the roots that once pulled the water from under it and made it unstable and potentially, well, a little on the dangerous side, so to say, actually started, giving it back value. So these are the kinds of things that if you're actually looking at house flipping, you can see a lot of. Because a lot of the houses that are being built as well, they may just be lived in by someone who's kind of, let's say, a slob, and they're kind of ruining the value of their house just on appearance basis. So that's a good thing for us, because if that means all you have to do is do a paint job before reselling it, that's potentially very, very good and can actually yield some pretty high profits. However, if you see something out there which seems too good to be true, always make sure to at least do a full inspection of the integrity of the house itself. Because the last thing you want to do is buy this house, get all the paperwork sorted, and then realize there's something wrong with it.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of horror stories about these kind of things. I've seen even people that put themselves in debt for it as well. Like, that is something I think you should never do when you start to flip anything. You should never put yourself in debt for it. You should always use the money that you have for flipping and not getting a loan, for example, because that is just too high risk in my opinion to even start to flip with it, especially when you're there, when then you're getting into higher expenses with houses, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so that's always, one of the things to take a lot of care for. So what do you personally think is one of the, best housing, or I'm sorry, flipping markets to get into, as just starting off, let's say?
Just starting off, I think couch flipping is really fun. If you look at it, you go around your neighborhood, or, well, your city. I think your neighborhood. There's a low probability of having houses in your couches in your neighborhood, but you go around your city, or you use things like eBay, Craigslist. What else is there out there? Anywhere that has a free market, Facebook Marketplace, for example, as well. You go around and about these things, then you start to find houses, not houses, what? Couches. Well, you look at them. I've seen a very, very great tips on these things. For example, you can when you have a couch, you will always make sure to buy like a couch that has sheets that you can pull off the couch and wash. So if the couch is actually dirty or old, you can just pull off these sheets, put them into the washing machine and then the dryer, and just clean it off by yourself. So you don't have to actually clean the whole couch itself, which in the end, well, saves you a lot of work, and potentially even not even that. It also leaves this very, very good window for you to actually do something about this, or for you to actually fix the couch by yourself. Because if you have a dirty couch, where you can't what is it called? Where you can't change the sheets off the couch, you will be stuck with a dirty couch forever, because some stains just won't go away, never.
No, exactly. No matter how hard you try.
Yeah,
but that's actually an interesting one. Yeah.
So that's why I think couch flipping is actually very interesting, because you can find them anywhere. They're very available. There's practically always people that want to buy couches, for example, as well. Like, there's always people moving. They will need new couches. Some people can't get their couches. Sorry. Some people can't get their couch, or can't move their couches from one house to the other, or from one country to the other. So they just sell them and buy a new one somewhere else. So you can profit from that as well. So yeah, that would be a good beginner thing. I mean, the next beginner thing I would probably recommend, and that I'm personally very, very fascinated by, is just this car flipping thing, because cars are even though they lose a lot of value when you buy them new, or like factory new, and then you wear them off for a year, or you drive them around for a year or two, they lose a lot of value. You're still dealing with something that is in the mid range of that can be in the mid ranges of like 500 euros up to 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 euros potentially. And so basically, you can work with cars. What I'm trying to tell is, you can decide what your maximum capital that you're trying to put into it is pretty freely. You're not tied to a certain value, because there's very, very expensive cars, and there's also very, very cheap cars that you can work with.
Yeah. I think personally that flipping cars, well, a very good way of flipping in and of itself. I don't really see it too much as a starter thing for
Yeah.
myself.
Oh, that is actually very true, though. Yeah.
Because let me think about it like this way, right? If I want to buy a car from somebody to use it for flipping, I first have to put it on to my own name. And then
Mhm.
for a lot of countries, there's possible taxes that you have to pay over actually owning the car itself.
Mhm.
So this already puts you on, let's say, a timer, right? So you don't really want something that's taking money out of your wallet at the same time if you have it, as you have the money, or as you have the equipment. Just
Yes.
because, well, it's kind of against what you want to do. You need to do it quick. Well, some of the people just starting out may just not have the time. So one of the few ways of flipping that I would ever actually suggest anybody, if you're a fan of fashion, why not, for once, go onto a website where they sell secondhand clothing and take a look at it. You'll see a lot of these worn out shirts, but also some hidden gems every once in a while. It's very much in our culture nowadays to simply recycle the clothing, or not recycle it, but just sell the clothing after we've even worn it a few times. There's a lot of perfectly good clothing out there on these websites. Try to get some of this clothing for cheap, which you know, of course, you should do your own research at all times with that. You can actually resell for a higher profit. So then you simply buy the item. You probably pay for shipping, or the person who sells it pays for shipping, and it gets to your home delivered. Then you simply unbox it, take a look at the gradation of it, and then put it back online, just for a higher price, seeing as you know the value of the actual product. See, it's a funny place to be in because some of these items, I believe, don't actually get sold because their price is too low. Let's
Yeah.
say, right, Aaron, I'm selling you a pair of Nike shoes, right?
Yes.
So I have two of the exact same kinds of shoes. Would you think you'd be much more likely to buy the $6 pair of the shoes, or let's say the $20 pair of the shoes? Let's say these shoes market at around, let's say, €50.
Hmm.
Which one to you seems like the more obvious buy or the more higher quality buy? It would most likely be, well, the $20 one, right?
Yes.
Because
But
we have a certain amount of disdain for these lower cost, for these lower priced products,
Mhm.
out of a simple way of distrust. We don't always trust something which is very low in price, but they may be just as good as what's higher in price.
Mm, yes, but the thing is, you're asking the wrong person. You're asking the wrong person right now because I am the one that bought Nike Air Force One for €5 on a flea market and still wears them.
All
But
right. Maybe you're not the right person for it
but
then.
but obviously, but I think the obvious answer would be definitely the the €20 ones because they're probably going to be the newer ones, and the ones of higher quality, as you explained it.
Yeah, exactly. So for some of the products you may find online, people are kind of undervaluing it, or they think the secondhand market is really just for everything that they deem not
Yeah.
worthy to be worn anymore, which for a lot of people these days is rather high quality. So that out of the way, I think actually clothing flipping may be one of the best ones to pursue in your early years. And then, let's say you're a teen, you're just with some friends most of your days. Why not, try couch flipping for fun, Just
Yeah,
try to get it. If
that's
one
a
of
good
your
point.
friends, if one of your friends has a big car or something which they can fit a couch onto, why not just go for it? But always expect it to come from a place of pleasure instead of a place of, greed or trying to get the money out of it.
Yeah, but what I gotta say, what I gotta say, if we're whilst we're still at this let's say more younger phase of your life where you're trying to flip, what I think is also very very interesting is just flea market flipping. So you just go into a flea market, you find random things that you think are look interesting. It could be clothing, it could be old antique stuff. I mean that's what you get on a lot of flea markets, just these old very antique stuff things. And what I've seen from Gary V, I think was it was that his name? Um, he's gone into flea markets. I think he demonstrated it in a video once with mugs. He literally went into a flea market with $50. He bought a couple of mugs. And but here comes the big but before he used it. He used his phone. He used his phone in a very very smart way. So he went ahead and found these specific mugs. Then he looked them up on eBay, and which is going to lead me to basically a point that I'm going to try to explain then, which is essential in flipping. he went on eBay and he searched this mug up, and then he determined in the end, or well, found out in the end, that these kind of mugs on eBay resell for like 50 euros each. And he bought them like 5 euros a piece, 2, 3, I would say. Not euros, obviously dollars, but like you get the point. This is I don't know the exact prices right now, but this is just to bring the point over, which is now the core point of it is now you have to know your market, as always, kind of in well, a lot of finances, but here you just have to know your market, and here it is more so easier than you would go with a lot of bigger stuff, for example crypto markets, because they can be quite complex. Here all you have to know is basically how much does this typically resell for on eBay. Nothing more. Literally, all you have to do is, when you get onto flea market, you find, let's say, an old jacket. Let's just say you find a really old watch that somebody's trying to just get off for 5 euros, 10 euros. You can just take this watch into your hand, flip it over, try to see if you can find any names on it or any serial numbers or anything. Look it up, and then just look it up on Google, and then just try to figure out how much this stuff actually resells for on eBay, Craigslist, etc. You name it. And I think that's actually quite a fun way. But like you said, this is a fun way, and it's probably something that is not going to make you a lot of profit. But if you're trying to just find a little side hustle as a 16-year-old, 18-year-old, or you're in college and you don't have nothing to do on the weekends, this is actually something I find quite interesting.
Yeah, it is actually one of those interesting things where people that actually do make it their full-time jobs usually do have a very broad spectrum of knowledge on the certain products that they're trying to buy and sell. And that exactly means also, one of the things that you may overlook by accident. So there are certain products, of course, which are going to be worth something, right? But who wants to buy them? And that's always one question, in my opinion, that you have to keep into your head. Am I going to be able to actually sell this?
Well, that's a good question. That's a good question for now.
Yeah, because of course, when we're talking about shirts or something, it's obvious that there's always going to be someone out there who simply wants something that's either not available anymore, or that just looks for a shirt but they want it a little cheaper because they didn't like the store price.
Yeah.
But hypothetically, like, there are also these items or these things that are like, gumballs. You probably wouldn't try to sell a gumball to someone after you've, chewed on it.
Of course.
Right. It makes no sense. Anything that will happen to it is probably going to just degrade the value. And, even if you lick the gumball, nobody really wants it.
That is a great analogy, actually. Yeah. But could you name an example for this analogy?
So what I would like to say for this analogy would be things that are already sold at stores for a very cheap price. So reselling these in and of itself doesn't have too much of a purpose unless it's like a limited edition item, which actually goes up in value instead of going down in value after use. So yeah, one of the hard things about that is if it's not some type of shoe, something limited edition shoe, but it's a very low cost, let's say like a toy or something, right? You can flip toys. Like, it's not an uncommon thing to do. A lot of the parents these days have younger children, and they just go onto secondhand websites because, well, my kid is going to grow out of these things anyway, so I'm better off getting them for cheap. Well, some of these toys are only going to be deteriorated to a point where you may think upfront, wow, this has a little bit of value. Let's say, you see like an old... let's say you see one of these car racetracks, right? We all played with those as a kid.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, so like a car racetrack. So most of these things are relatively fun, right? But let's say there's this old car racetrack, and I bought it for relatively cheap. I bought it for 5 euros. The store sale price would be back in the day about $30. I'm sorry, I bought it for $5. And I have this thing now. So normally you'd kind of say, oh, that's pretty nice. You get to probably resell that for $5 extra, make a tenner off of it. But for a lot of these things, no, you probably won't. Like, for example, if we look deeper into a product like that, these racetracks, they usually are a certain size and they fit a certain type of toy. So if I only buy the racetrack off of a product which may have already been cancelled years ago, I'm never going to sell this thing because nobody has those toys that have to be with it for it to work or function at
Yeah.
home. So those are the types of items you kind of want to steer away from. It are these items which need a different component to function. Because unless the person that you're selling it to already has the component, it's not doable. There's nothing you can do with it. And that makes some items just pointless in flipping.
Yep, that just all comes down to the same point again. Know your market before you start into it.
Well, yes, of course, and that's why people are so hyper specialized in certain markets, right? Because
Yeah.
if there's like car markets and you're buying a vintage car, you'd probably not want there to be something missing because you know the price of that component is going to be relatively expensive.
But right now, when we're just talking about it, I see like a little niche as well for it. Which is being the one knowing the market for somebody. It is very, very niche when I think about it right now, but being the one that provides, like you said earlier in this when we talked about real estate, being somebody that is just going along with somebody on like a real estate visit to view this one house,
Yes,
and reviewing with this person is actually a good
if I
niche.
may interject though, there is usually a certain type of inspector person who does this, who usually, is in construction already.
Mhm.
So therefore these people can just do it with their construction knowledge.
Oh yeah,
I
never
think,
mind.
I think one of the better examples for this would actually be, have you ever watched the series Pawn Stars?
I think
I'm Rick Harrison, this
Sure.
is Pawn Stars.
no.
It's very iconic, all right? So every time there's an item, and they're like a pawn store, like I say,
Mhm.
every time there's an item which is even remotely unique or interesting, there's always the same line being thrown. I am quite unsure about the price of this. Let me call in an expert.
Ooh.
So there is actually a wide host of experts on different forms of knowledge. So for example, if there's like something from back in history, like let's say someone tries to sell like a 1940s, 1920s bayonet or something like that.
Mhm.
There will usually be someone who's an inspector and who is very knowledgeable in the certain topics of history to come take a look at possibly the serial numbers, when it was given out, look at the medals, because they just know everything about this. So there is a
Yeah.
wide market for those kinds of people. But I think generally, if you want to be a flipper yourself, you're looking at more generalized stuff because, well, I'm probably not going to be a specialist in like flipping Second or First World War bayonets, right?
Of course.
That seems like a bit of an odd flipping market to get into,
But I mean, it's an interesting one if you think about it.
Yeah, exactly. You can try it as hard as you like, but at some point, the market's gonna dry up a little bit for you. I'll just be honest. So, yeah, well, being an expert is good. Try to just get general information. That's what I liked so much because you talked about, taking a look at something, grab it in your hand,
Yeah.
flipping it over, and just taking a look. Okay, it's this and this serial number by this and this company. Let me Google it. Because a Google search at the end of the day does do most of the work for you, right?
But that would lead me to like another question. How do you use most of these platforms where you actually have to like look them up? Like I see like a little problem here, because if you start to look it up on these markets, you will have to essentially compare a lot of markets. Well, no, not markets, but like if you look into these platforms, for example, eBay, Facebook. I think the most common ones are Craigslist, eBay, and Facebook Marketplace that I've seen. That if you get into them, you will have to compare each and every one of them, which is going to take some time. Quite.
Yes, but this is where the part of being at least knowledgeable out a certain niche you're in. Like for example, I don't really expect someone flipping houses to be able to flip cars like in a very good way, right? If you really want to make flipping one of your thing, and you really want to do it, like, yep, this is my side hustle, this is my hustle, I can do it whenever, whatever. It's always I got the right choice, right? Because you need to be knowledgeable, and that's what I actually said. Like, if I'm niching or I'm getting deep into car flipping, and I know, I really want to do car flipping and I want to do it well, you'll probably get some of these equipment things, right? Like OBD2, like an OBD2, like a code meter, etc. Just so you can actually know what's going on inside the car. And the only problem I see with flipping most of the time is not having the full information And there are, especially for car flipping, tools that will give you that full range of information to actually make sure that you're making the right decision.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
But with that being said, of course, like you've said, there's a broad range of markets. And really, I think flipping, if you're doing it as just a secondary small income, basically, or you could even do it for your own fun, to be honest. Like, I think it'd be pretty interesting to get into just for your own sake, just see how far you can get with it. Because it doesn't have to be an expensive occupation like some other things. Just, sometimes just open up eBay, take a look at some products, and kind of go, what item, in my opinion, definitely has a higher worth than it is being sold for currently? And then, of course, if it's going to be very expensive for you to buy it, take a good look, research it, probably compare it. So do a Google search for the exact same product that you're already seeing there, and then go off of that. Try to not have a certain bias towards the product before, actually committing to it. Because that will probably just set you up for failure in the long run. And one of the other things I actually think about a lot when I think of flipping is like, if I'm going on eBay and I'm buying a lot of these products to flip them, flipping doesn't always have to be a very fast process at all. So, for example, if you're buying clothing, you can buy a lot of clothing off of eBay, which is worth more, but that doesn't mean you're also going to sell it as soon as or as fast as you bought it for, right?
Yeah.
There's a perfectly good chance that it's just going to sit there in your home and nobody wants to buy it because maybe the size is off from what most people want or what most people wear, right? So that's actually one of the things you have to look out for clothing flipping, is making sure that you get the right sizes, especially for shoes. Because, for example, if I were to sell my shoes and you were, let's say, to sell your shoes, what's your shoe size? What's your European shoe size?
43, 44.
Exactly. Your shoes would be worth more than mine, even if we were the exact same pair, the exact same amount. Because I have European shoe size 48, which is very large. And there aren't a lot of people who have the same, size feet. So therefore, that will already kind of, lower the value of what I'm selling. And the same goes if you're buying shirts at, let's say, triple XL. The market may be a little bit slimmer, and that will actually devalue the product you're trying to sell. So if you're not looking out for those things when buying, you're going to end up with something like that and not be able to sell it again. And then you may actually realize why they sold it for so cheap in the first place.
Well, yeah, this actually all comes down to this risk managing thing as well. Oh well, I think the risk management here is though, which still comes down to the first point. The risk management here is definitely very let's say factorized by knowing your market again.
Well, yeah, it's also just a form of logical thinking, right?
Yeah.
What factors can actually devalue the product I'm trying to sell? What increases its value? And just how should I go about it most of the time, really? So, with that being said, I think we've basically covered all of it, or everything I've wanted to say.
I was about to say we are starting to
kind of run
get
out.
into a loop.
All right. Well, thank you everybody so much for watching to the 4th episode of the Monday Money Podcast, coming at you live 6 p.m. every Monday. With that being said, it's on to Aaron for our socials.
So, thank you very much for listening into this episode. We are grateful for every listener that we have, and you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and obviously can join our Discord server as well. Everything will be linked down below. Thank you, everybody. Have a nice evening.